You have arrived at Planet Who Doesn't Have a Podcast.
Welcome back to Who Doesn't Have a Podcast? And the emergency TARDIS Cloister Bell has been rung because we've finally got some news about Doctor Who, Dan.
I cannot believe we've finally reached this day. It has been months of speculation. We've been up there with Swifties, just kind of like trying to scope out and dig for any kind of possible clues. But finally, we have confirmation from the BBC and from indeed Disney Plus that the partnership is officially off. It is over. 2 years of Who and Disney is no more.
Disney Plus ends Doctor Who partnership. BBC commits to continue series. And the next instalment of the show will be a Christmas special in 2026, written by Russell T Davies, which is kind of what we expected.
Yes. I think we knew deep down that he was going to have some kind of relationship with the show, and particularly writing it. But you really made a good point before we came on air about the fact that he has agreed to do a Christmas special.
No.
Now, normally if you are the showrunner, you're not just going to agree to do something, it's your job. So I suppose the next bit of speculation is, beyond the Christmas special next year, are we going to have a new showrunner?
Like we were discussing, I think, when we were doing all of this speculation about what was going to happen, I think this is pretty much what we thought was going to happen. They needed to tie up the loose ends. So I think what's going to happen is the Christmas special in 2026 is going to tie up any of this Billy Piper stuff. Tie up this sort of new era of New Who.
But some interesting points. So Bad Wolf Productions are going to do this Christmas special. So it is his production company that are going to do it. We've also had some news that the war between the land and the sea, this is the second bit of breaking news, it's not quite hit the spotlight in the same way, but the war between the land and the sea has officially got a release date. So it's going to be December this year on BBC One. Interestingly enough, it's not going to go onto Disney Plus until February. So this all came through on the we kind of clocked it on Instagram really early this afternoon, and it has been confirmed in the same statement that we are finally going to get the War Between the Land and the Sea, and there's going to be a 2-month gap between it releasing in the UK and of course on Disney Plus around the world. Now the other thing we don't know about this is whether or not Doctor Who, particularly the last 2 seasons, will remain on Disney Plus for users around the world. We know as a fact it's going to remain on iPlayer regardless. But yeah, after months and months of waiting, we've now got a launch date. So
that is a surprise.
So the BBC remains fully committed to the show and will announce plans for the next series in due course to ensure the Doctor's adventures continue. Lindsay Salt, director of drama, said, "We'd like to thank Disney Plus for being terrific global partners and collaborators over the past 2 seasons, and for the upcoming The War Between the Land and the Sea. The BBC remains fully committed to Doctor Who, which continues to be one of our most loved dramas, and we are delighted that Russell T Davies is coming back. Furthermore, we know that, again, December, we've got a start date for The War Between the Land and the Sea, and there's going to be a brand new animation series for CBBC, which is currently in development. So it looks like they are really going to go gung-ho with the Whoniverse at long last.
But how much can they do that? Because do you remember what I was saying a few months back, where we predicted this was going to happen, we predicted Disney was going to pull out, and then we weirdly had this co-pro between Disney and the BBC, The War Between the Land and the Sea, and then the flagship show was going to continue elsewhere. So The War Between the Land and the Sea, I think, is in a really interesting position now, because it's kind of what we said. It's kind of just being dropped out there into the ether with no real... I mean, did they imagine that it would be a returning series? If so, does it return without Disney? Does the BBC and Bad Wolf just pick up The War Between the Land and the Sea for any potential future series themselves? That's really weird.
It's really bizarre. I've kind of got a sort of sneaky doubt or kind of feeling that that show was originally commissioned alongside what would have been season 3 of Shooty's Who. So it wouldn't surprise me if there were any plot points that would seem like a natural fit in the main show, but we might not see fully fleshed out at least for another year or so, because again, we're going to have a 12-month gap between the release of this and New Who. So it's going to be more of an interesting watch, mainly for curiosity's sake, also because it's such a, from what we've seen so far, it seems to be a very tonal difference to the main show. And like you said as well, if the funding's not there, are they going to explore that series any further? Could it just be a standalone thing, so you get more of a sense of remind me what's the name of sort of military
unit?
Thank you. Is it going to be more of an exploratory thing of unit, so that when the show comes back, they might have more of an influence on kind of the Doctor's adventures, because we've kind of firmly established that across the last 2 seasons. It's a really, really interesting time for Who, but I think for all of us collectively, it's a sigh of relief that we have finally got closure on what has been such a long-running predicament. And I think it's proof that sometimes these collaborations between big corporations don't work out, and that's okay. It's totally fine. We've probably seen a side of Doctor Who that we might not see again in terms of scale, in terms of visual effects, in terms of all that kind of stuff. But we've kind of had that little niggle within these last 2 seasons where it's kind of been a bit too big. And for me anyway, it's kind of lost a bit of its charm.
Well, I think it's been big in terms of budget, but in terms of impact, I think it's felt quite small.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that's been reflected again in the partnership thing. Like I say, it's very specific wording that Russell T Davies has agreed to do a Christmas special.
That's what I want to discuss. That is the main point. So I've got 2 things that I think could happen. The cynic's view, and I think this is the one that we share, and the one that the announcement kind of gives up, is what we said at the beginning. This will be the way to wrap up this sort of era. Russell T Davies will leave, and then the BBC will continue with someone else. The other thing that I thought about is when Russell T Davies announced that he was coming back to Doctor Who, he said that it was because they had global ambitions for it and they were finally partnering with a streaming service. Are we going to get news in the next few months that the next series of Doctor Who is going to be with another big global player, and Russell T Davies continues, and he continues to try and build up the Whoniverse like he wanted to? I don't know.
I mean, it is interesting because we did hear a couple of months ago very, very scarce rumours about a potential link with HBO, and they would be the kind of only other potential streaming service that it would sort of make sense on, if you like, because HBO have got a long-term partnership with the likes of Sky in the UK. There's been a lot of like co-productions in the past, so a BBC arm of that wouldn't be amiss.
The other thing that I was just thinking about is, what if the war between the land and the sea is a major success? What if it does incredibly well? It does really well on iPlayer, it does really well on terrestrial TV, and it does really well on Disney. And Disney have co-produced it. So is there a future where that does really well and Disney continue to fund this Doctor Who spin-off, but they don't have the flagship show, and then the flagship show is elsewhere with another producer? And the other thing that I think is really interesting is, this is kind of the third possibility. If they don't announce a new streaming provider or someone to co-produce the show with, which I think is what they want, then the BBC have fully committed themselves to doing future series of Doctor Who anyway. They've said, we are continuing with Doctor Who. It's staying on the BBC. You don't need to worry. Does that mean they just produce it themselves? Or obviously they produce it with Bad Wolf? There's no way that Russell T Davies sticks around for that, because he's already done that. That's what happened when he brought the show back. It was just produced by the BBC. So, and what did they do about the budget? Because we all know, I mean, the 10 million per episode was debunked. That's stupid. But we all know that Disney put a lot of money into the show. So how do they do it going forward if it's just them? How do they do it going forward if it's with a streaming provider? Does the budget go down? Do they strip it back? Would Russell T Davies be interested in that? There's a lot of questions.
There's so many questions.
I think the Whoniverse is in an interesting place as well. Because if the BBC just decide to continue Doctor Who by themselves, or with a streaming partner, is the dream of all the spin-offs still alive with that? That the BBC produced Doctor Who as the main show, and then the world of spin-offs that we were supposed to get as well. It's interesting.
It's interesting, and it's also interesting that they're going down the CBBC route as well, which I've never really known them do before. It's quite a young age audience.
You've got to get them early, Dan. You've got to get the Whovians
get them early. Yeah, just take them down. Yeah, it's quite funny, isn't it, that after all these months, Doctor Who kind of finds like itself almost in a life imitating art sense that, you know, we are now in flux because of everything that's going on. But I think where a lot of people, and I've seen so many comments on social media, on Reddit, on different forums, and Google searches, stuff like that, about this is going to ruin the show, stuff like that. I completely disagree. I think the fact that it's going to be back fully in the BBC's hands, whether or not Bad Wolf continues to produce it, I don't know. That could have been part of the deal with Disney. We don't know that. We're not insiders. What we do know is that it is fully returning to the BBC, and I'm kind of relieved because it stops that situation of midnight releases, time zones, all this stuff getting spoilt, which for at least half of the partnership we had to suffer from. And I hope that it returns back firmly to the sci-fi swing of things. I feel like the fantasy route they tried, that wasn't for me, and I think a lot of people would probably agree with that. But it's a very interesting period now, and I think the fact that the Beeb have fully committed to the war between land and the sea, they've confirmed that already. The CBBC side of thing, I think we're going to have a Whoniverse, but not in the way that we thought we would. So I think it might be different mediums, it might be different platforms. It could be more of a podcasting. BBC Sounds might be like an audiobook kind of version of Who. They might just tap into all of that instead. So really, it's kind of opened the door again to more possibilities. And I think it's going to be an interesting 12 months because we're going to find out about this sooner rather than later. They normally tend to film the Christmas specials in the summer, so we're only about 6-8 months away from potentially seeing leaks of that and stuff like that. But I think as far as fans go, it's a relief, and it should also be quite an exciting time because we're going to see, I think we're going to see the BBC really ramp up their efforts in this because they know what they had to lose. They nearly lost it. And now they've kind of firmly grasped it back. I think it's going to be a real change for good, as far as I'm concerned. I'm just going to say it. Break glass in emergency. Let's pull David Tennant back. He's there.
David Tennant is appearing in this Christmas special with Billy Piper. You know, I heard a really interesting take on this. I think it was Confused Adipose. He's like a Whovian on YouTube. It's very good. His videos are very good. But he was talking about how it makes absolutely no sense to bring Billy Piper back as the Doctor if none of the characters around the central character recognise the fact that she looks exactly like Rose Tyler. Unless it's just the Doctor themselves. But what's the point? The character has to come into contact with people that recognise that face.
The only other option it could bring back, and again, I don't know if it would happen, is Christopher Eccleston. There could be a full-on 2005 punch through the emergency glass, bring him back. He knows Russell T Davies is out the door.
But not for the Christmas special. And Billy Piper isn't staying for the whatever the rebooted series is going to be. The Billy
Just
Piper.
watch her pop up in the war between land and the sea now, and we're all going to go, oh my God!
Hey, there we go. Well, that's it for another episode of Who Doesn't Have a Podcast. You'll be sure as hell that we'll be seeing you very soon because we're going to see the war between the land and the sea very soon. So,
which Do you know what? After we're in for months, we no longer had a podcast. We're finally back in first gear. I love this.
No longer are these podcasts just going to be us staring into the thin air, just trying to think about things to talk about. We're going to actually have stuff to talk about.
As always, please like, subscribe, share, follow us on all our socials. We're on Spotify, Apple Music, all your streaming services as well. Please give us a follow on there as we get prepared now for sort of 3.0 Who. Now it's come back. And we'll see what happens along the way.